Good evening. My name is Helen Picard. I'll be chair of this school committee meeting of February 4th, 2021, and it is now 7:01, and I call the meeting to order. I ask that we all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded, and please silence your devices. If you are in the room and going to speak, please speak very close to your microphone. If you are joining remotely and not speaking, please keep yourself on mute and unmute when you are going to join the meeting. I want to read to you the governor's order from March 12. Pursuant to this order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, Section 18, and the Governor March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the North Andover School Committee may be conducted via remote participation by some or all members and staff. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website, www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to hear the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 99 or Verizon Channel 28, or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on the school department website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible. Again, a reminder, silence all devices, and this meeting is being recorded. And we will begin with roll call. I'm Helen Picard, chair of the meeting. We have with us, if members can answer in the affirmative, Holly Lynch.
Here.
David Teresi.
Yes.
Andrew McDevitt.
Yes.
Amy Mabley.
Yes.
And we have Dr. Gilligan.
Yes.
And Dr. Mealy in the room.
Yes.
And Dr. Gilligan, do you want to do roll call with your folks that are joining us remotely, please?
Sure. High school principal Chet Jackson.
Yes.
High school director of guidance Stephen Nugent.
Yes.
Middle school principal George Gonsalves.
Yes.
Franklin principal Joseph Clark.
Yes.
Atkinson principal Erin O'Loughlin.
Yes.
Sergeant principal Karen Leahy.
Maybe.
Leahy.
I don't see her.
We'll come back to that one. Bradstreet, or the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center, Dr. Goddard.
Yep, here.
Kittredge principal Richard Cushing.
Here, present.
Thompson School principal Chris Raymond.
Yes.
Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Lorene Marks.
Here.
Executive Director of Special Education, Marcy Bacuzzi.
Here.
Humanities Coordinator and EL Director, Kristen Ando.
Here.
STEM Coordinator District-wide, Carol Lockholm.
Here.
Director of Health, Wellness, Nursing, Cheryl Barzak.
Yes.
And did I miss anyone else?
Our student representative.
Oh, is our student reps here, Mika and Eamon, are you guys present?
Yes.
Here.
Oh, and last but not least, how could I forget? The town manager, Melissa Rodriguez. Melissa,
Thank you for having me.
thank you for coming.
Did you get Lorene?
She did.
Yep.
He did.
Nikki Murphy is also here.
Oh, and our Director of SEL, Nikki Murphy. Sorry, I thought I had everyone, but I do not see everyone on the screen, so I'm glad we were able to get everyone in.
Good, thank you very much. And just so the public knows, generally at this meeting, when we're having our second read of the budget or our continuing read of the budget, we do generally have most of the administration with us, but in person, they are in the audience that does not have a camera on them. So this cast of thousands is nothing unusual. We're not expecting anything crazy to happen. It's just we can see them all this year. So thank you all for being here. So our first order of business is public comment, and we did receive a few public comments through the form. So I will start in the order that they were received. The first one is from David Evangelista at 28 Morningside Lane, and it reads, "This comment is sent on behalf of several parents. Many parents are frustrated with the lack of communication from school administration regarding possible changes to schedule, possible return for an additional day, modify current policies to become more in line with CDC guidance and recommendations, and their thoughts on other districts which are making changes to return to 4 or 5 days in-person learning. As I am sure the administration is aware, many districts across the state are preparing return to increased in-person learning. Some return fully to 5 days a week. There have been districts nearby which have been doing this for some time. This could at least be considered for the most vulnerable students affected by remote learning, elementary age students. Several critical questions must be answered, CDC guidance is a recommendation of 6 feet, quote, if possible, unquote, but many districts are using 3 feet. Why isn't this considered? What is being done to get creative with return to school, such as barriers between desks, between students, teachers, use of empty buildings in the district, consideration for outdoor classes as weather allows? Answering these questions honestly and with thought are so important for our children who are struggling daily with the current system in place. Additionally, a poll should be implemented to determine how many children actually wish to return in-person learning. It is possible that numbers are lower than anticipated and would actually allow greater in-person learning opportunities for those who desire it. Although we would greatly appreciate consideration for all aforementioned concerns, a bare minimum, we would like open communication to improve. Thank you for your time. We look forward to hearing a response and working together for one common goal, the well-being and appropriate education of our children." Thank you, David Evangelista. The second comment is from Jennifer Luz, L-U-Z, 104 Thistle Road. Excuse me. I get distracted from time to time because sometimes I echo back to myself in like a delay, so please forgive me if it seems that I'm having trouble reading. I am very thankful for the teachers in the Hampton, New Hampshire public schools. To the school committee and Dr. Gilligan, I want to bring to your attention the op-ed published in the Andover Townsman today by the doctors at Andover Pediatric, a local pediatrician serving many North Andover families, including mine. These doctors urge our community to get our children back to school for their physical and emotional health. I'm sorry, that's my home phone. I can't turn it off. They state in no uncertain terms that remote school is not as beneficial as in-person, and that due to school closure and remote schooling, they have observed among their patients, quote, a dramatic rise in anxiety and depression, and that, quote, obesity rates are skyrocketing. They applaud our schools for creating a safe place for our children. They have seen no evidence of in-school transmission of COVID. They urge our communities to get children back in the classroom because, quote, attendance is crucial to our children's recovery from this pandemic, end quote. The most recent scientific data suggests the same. This thoughtful letter by local pediatricians summarizes what most of us parents observe daily. Our children are suffering from not being in school. They need to be back in school with their teachers and friends every day. The rates of transmission are lower, and the schools have not been a source of transmission. You have done the hard work of figuring out how to keep kids safe in the buildings. Now is the time to get our children back in the classroom every day. I hope the committee and administration will take the concerns of parents and local doctors seriously, and finally to put in place a plan to get our kids back in school ASAP. There is no reason for our kids not to be in person full-time following February vacation. The science supports it, our kids need it. Only you have the power to make it happen. Please don't fail our kids now. And the last public comment from the forum is from Jennifer Frezin, 35 Hawthorne Place, and it reads, Dear Chairperson Picard and members of the committee, the social workers we expected to add to the budget for fiscal year 22 look like they will be now added in fiscal year 23. And on slide 26 of the presentation, it is explained that the services provided by these positions can be covered by COVID-related funding for fiscal year 22 as part of the recovery services. My question is, how will we, as a district, address an increased need for emotional support that many children will have when they return to school, having experienced, along with all of us as adults, this prolonged period of stress, disruption, and in many cases, personal loss or other trauma, and acknowledge the struggles many of them will face in the aftermath? What additional supports related to these emotional needs do we expect to be able to put in place with the COVID-related funding? And are teachers and school leadership confident it will be enough? I support whatever investments are necessary to ensure our kids in our community recover emotionally so that they can thrive academically. Thank you for your time. I apologize if this has already been addressed at a previous meeting. That is our public comment for tonight. Thank you, everybody who submits those comments. We did have a couple of other comments that were submitted and subsequently withdrawn. And I just want to note that for the record, because some of them came in on the form, and the form is in my email, and so part of the public record, blah, blah. Okay. Our consent agenda is approval of minutes. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from January 28th as printed in the packet.
Madam Chair, I'll make a
What about
motion to approve the minutes from January 28th, 2021 as presented in the packet.
Second.
So that sounded like it was moved by Ms. Mably and seconded by Mr. McDevitt. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, and we'll have a roll call vote, and we'll start with Ms. Lynch.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Mably,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So that is 5-0 to approve the minutes. Thank you very much.
Are we also
Miss-
supposed to approve December 14th?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I did not see that. Yep, so can we have a motion for that? I could have taken them both together. I'm sorry about that.
I move that we approve the minutes from December 14th as presented in the packet.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Ms. Lynch and seconded by Mr. McDevitt. And we'll have a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Lynch,
Yes.
Mr. Teresi,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Mably,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes, so that is 5-0 in favor of approval of those minutes. Are we ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay.
You're the boss.
All right, so we're on to the student report. So it is Mr. O'Carroll and Ms. Pelletier.
Yes. Hi. So good evening, everyone. We have a relatively brief report for you tonight. So we thought we'd start off by highlighting some of the athletic achievements at the high school as we did last week. So the boys and girls ski teams, along with the gymnastics teams, continue to maintain their winning records. Last week, I had mentioned that there's a tree fundraiser going on at the North Andover High School, courtesy of the Interact Club. Now, in their first week, they have sold over 100 trees to residents of North Andover, which puts them well on their way to their goal of selling 250. Just a reminder that trees are $5 each. They will be planted at the end of April. So, Mr. McDevitt, you have plenty of time to buy Mr. Teresi a gift. The freshman class is holding its apparel fundraiser through next week, I believe, to raise money for their class. Mika?
Additionally, Student Council recently held a fundraiser for United Way of Merrimack Valley for COVID relief. They raised $600, in a fundraiser that they call Stop the Beeb, which involves playing Justin Bieber over and over in the hallway, and you can donate money to have that stopped. So that raised $600 for the high school. Additionally, the senior class next week will be holding a grab and go brunch next week as kind of an add-on, because a lot of the seniors have been obviously missing out on a lot of things this year. So we thought as class officers, it'd be something nice we could do. And we want to give a special thanks to all the local businesses and all the parents that have been donating to make this possible. Additionally, though this isn't anything official, Eamon and I did discuss it and thought it was worthwhile mentioning as representatives of the student body that a lot of students did feel very strongly that some sort of snow day should be incorporated into the school schedule when possible. And a petition did circulate through the students and some of the parents as well this week about that. And that was something especially seniors felt very strongly about.
Mika, I would say as superintendent, I got a few emails from some really thoughtful emails, not from parents, but from seniors. And I went back and forth with some communications and really thoughtful information. So I appreciated it and something to think about moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Gilligan. And the last thing we have on our report tonight is that the survey that we mentioned last week about how the student body is feeling about the new schedule with the synchronous/live portion of class for the first 20 minutes was sent out yesterday. More than half of the student body has responded to that survey, and next week student council and student ambassadors who compiled the survey will be going through the results to see where general opinion stands, and we should have more for you after that. And that's all we have for you tonight.
That's terrific. Is there anybody in the membership that wants to ask a question of our student reporters? Hearing none,
Well done.
I'll ask my quick question. I'm just curious about this. Is there some security in the survey to make sure that it's only North Andover High School students that are filling it out?
I believe that it's like it will collect your email address so it can see whether it's coming from North Andover Public Schools account or not, which will allow them to filter it out. And it was only sent to North Andover students. And also we made sure yours and Mr. McDevitt's questions from last week, your suggested questions, were included in it.
Oh, thank you. We really appreciate that. Well, thank you guys for coming out. And as always, you're welcome to stay and welcome to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So we're on to the superintendent's report, and I will turn it over to Dr. Gilligan.
Thank you so much, Chair Picard. Tonight, first up, I have with us the Director of Wellness and Nursing, Cheryl Barzak, with a health update of how we're doing in the schools with COVID-19 and a few other updates. Go ahead, Ms. Barzak. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Dr. Gilligan. To start with some good news with our community and the town of North Andover, last week we were yellow for the first time in a while, which was great, at 5.3%. And as of today, we are again yellow at 2.9%.
Wow.
So that's obviously positive news. And the school counts have also been decreasing. We currently have 19 positive cases in our schools, 4 being in OLA. It's a big thank you to the families, to the staff and the students for following all of the mitigation strategies that we've put in place, not sending students to school when they're sick, keeping them home if they've been exposed, and especially the nurses with contact tracing. When somebody has been tested positive, the results go to the state, and by the time they get to our Board of Health, sometimes it can be a couple days, but our parents have been calling the nurses so we can start contact tracing right away. And that keeps close contacts out of our schools, and again, helps stop the spread. So I want to give a shout out to that system and how well the nurses are working with the health department, Caroline Ibbotson especially. From October to January, I've been trying to track how many cases we've had, just 261, and close contacts over 1,000 to 1,270. Again, being on top of these close contacts, I think has helped quite a bit. So I hope we continue to go in that direction. Another positive is the vaccine, which starting next week, we're giving the second dose to our first responders in the first phase. That includes all of our police and fire department, as well as our school nurses. And we're very involved with helping Caroline with the vaccine distribution. Of course, we wanted our teachers and actually all of our school staff to be the next group, but they have moved down a little bit on the priority, but we still plan to make sure that we are ready to do that. Again, the state has changed how many doses we receive as a community, so we are only receiving 100 a week. But one big shout out to the town. I was in their one of their meetings last week, and the group 75 and older, our seniors, the town is reaching out and helping them with the staff for getting appointments. It's a little bit complicated. It's an online system, and a lot of people 75 and older just are having trouble navigating it. And I've helped a few people myself, and I think that's a great thing that we're doing in our community to help the seniors get that done, people over 75. And as soon as we get that level done, we can move to the next level and hopefully get to our teachers, you know, as soon as possible, all of the school staff, because I think that will really, really help, you know, the comfort level. And again, another strategy for our goal of, you know, getting everybody back to school. And then the last thing I was going to talk about is February vacations coming up. Just ask people if they have any travel questions to please contact their school nurse. You know, there is a travel order still in place. There's testing sites available, and the nurses really are experts on where you might be able to get that done quickly. This Sunday's also the Super Bowl, and I know it's been talked about as being a super spreader everywhere. So just be mindful, make good decisions. You know, we just want to keep the numbers getting lower so that we can get a good handle of this pandemic. That's all I have. Thanks.
Cheryl, thank you. And for the folks at home, if you go to the nightly news that came out last Friday, right on the front page in the superintendent's report, you'll see a letter that I sent with the local superintendents to the governor, urging to see if we can get educators moved up a little bit in the classification. And there's also a PowerPoint in there from DESE about the classification of where educators fall, you know, really pushing for them to get vaccinated. So you could check that out there. And very importantly, thank you for mentioning the part about the Super Bowl and particularly February vacation so that we can keep these numbers low and keep our kids safe. Really appreciate it, Cheryl.
Dr. Gilligan, before we move on, can we check and see if there are any questions from the members for Ms. Barzak?
I had one question. You said 261 cases from October to January. I'm assuming that's just in the schools, right?
Just in the schools. That includes OLA staff and students.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. You said that we're at 2.9% community rate right now. Is that the lowest we've been? Did we have a lower number at any other point during the year? Do you happen to know?
I don't know that.
Okay.
Maybe Melissa does.
Sure. So our positivity rate is actually higher than it has been previously due to the reduced number of testing that we're doing. So when Merrimack College is in school, they do 4,900 tests a week. And so one of the reasons that we saw such a huge spike in that positivity rate was because Merrimack closed, and all of a sudden we had the same number of cases, but unfortunately much less tests. And so we actually saw Merrimack return to school this week, which I think is one of the reasons why our positivity rate is starting to look better. So yes, it certainly is about a third of where we were previously. So.
That's interesting.
Thank you. It's very complicated. I mean, data is helpful, but context is critical. So I appreciate that. Dr. Gilligan?
Great, and it really ties into the budget discussion, but just last week, you know, there was some question about, you know, the high school and they're, you know, working on proposing a new schedule, which they'll bring to school committee. So we wanted to just get an update on that from Principal Jackson and the Director of Guidance, Steve Nugent.
Thank you, Dr. Gilligan. I'd like to thank Dr. Gilligan for giving Steve and I a brief opportunity to speak tonight. We're so thankful for the support in the FY22 budget proposal. I know last week there was a possible concern mentioned about how teachers might feel about the possible new schedule implementation at the high school for this upcoming fall. We're so lucky at our high school to have a teaching staff that continues to work collaboratively for the benefit of all students. Our school is about building relationships and the growth of people. I'm very proud to publicly report, after gathering feedback from our teachers, that the majority of teachers at NAHS wholeheartedly support the return to a schedule in which we see our students in a traditional full year and semester format. They understand that some members may be concerned that our teachers might perceive a proposed schedule for next year as yet another change. They want the public to be assured that this is not the case. Our teachers do not see a proposed schedule for next year as another additional change, but rather as a return to a structure under which our teachers and staff can better service our students, providing both academic rigor and social emotional support. Steve?
Thanks, Chet. So I just wanted to add in that, we've been looking at this for a number of years, and really we were ready to make a move last year when the world shut down. It starts and ends with what's best for kids, and that's really where we were. Two bullets I wanted to share would be that the finer details would have to be worked out, but where we ended, the two most important things to students and staff were that classes run from September to June. And the big thing with that is that right now with the trimester schedule, a lot of students have different teachers for the same subject over the course of a year. It's very difficult to build relationships, and both the teachers and students, whenever we surveyed them, led with that. That was the number one wish at the top of the list for a new schedule if we ever went there. The second thing would be we would hopefully not rotate, and I think that's something we're really strongly considering. It would enhance the ability for our students who had the transportation means to get out of the building, to volunteer, to do work study. And then the big thing would be the dual enrollment opportunities that we are really falling behind as a district in. Many districts around us are able to take advantage of this because their schedules don't rotate, and they're able to get students on college campuses or bring college professors in. So it would give us an opportunity to do that for our students. That's it.
Great, and this group, they'll be back, with a much more comprehensive piece, working with the Teachers Association and bring it in front of school committee later this spring. So appreciate the update, guys.
So just on the question of teacher support of a change, are there any questions about teacher support?
No.
Hearing none, we'll move along. Anything else, Dr. Gilligan, in your report?
Can I actually just ask a quick question? So,
yes.
Obviously last week I asked, I wanted to be sure that the teachers are in support of that, and we received some communication today to that effect. And it's great to see Mr. Jackson and Mr. Nugent here as well. I really hope that we are able to put very soon a communication plan together for what this is going to look like for families. We have 8th graders coming up. We have students who are picking schedules right now. And we have families who, may not be watching right now and understand what the changes and the implications are. They're focused right now on how their kids are getting back to school. And so, if we don't have this communication plan put together and out in public, it's not something I'm going to be able to support. And I can tell you that one of my children at the high school was told how to pick his schedule, and the teacher said, "Don't worry about it, we're just going to slam electives in." And so for me to hear that, knowing that that teacher knows that I sit on the school committee, is very, very concerning. So the communication plan that comes out, I'm very curious to see what that looks like.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. Anyone else? Again, we're not going to discuss the merits of this change. We're just checking on those. The teacher support was what we were looking for at this point. Back to you, Dr. Gilligan.
And I think we're on to the chair's report.
Oh, back to me. We haven't had a lot of changes since last week, but I would just remind everybody that the next school committee community chat will take place on February 10th at 2:30, which is an early release day. So we would particularly welcome students who may want to speak to school committee members, as well as parents, community. You don't have to have kids in school to be part of that conversation. There will be 2 school committee members present so that we are not breaking any open meeting laws. And the link for that is in the nightly news that went out last week. So that's all for the chair's report. And we are on to old business. And the first order of old business is continued discussion and vote to approve the fiscal year 22 budget. So before we go into discussion, I'd entertain a motion to approve the budget.
So I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022 budget as presented in the packet.
Second.
So I believe that was moved by Ms. Mably and seconded by Ms. Lynch.
Correct.
Yes? Okay, and a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Lynch.
I thought we were having discussion.
Some discussion.
Vote on, no, I was thinking we needed to vote on, oh, sorry, I apologize for that.
That was a good try, though.
Now we're on to discussion.
We used to pull that stuff in the house all the time.
I was saying it's 7:30.
Do you have a date?
And to do so in an orderly fashion, I would start with Ms. Lynch.
So I have a question for the town manager. We discussed in the last 2 meetings the COVID recovery fund, and I appreciate your letter that you're committed for FY22. If we have needs that extend past FY22, would there be money for us in FY23 from the same free cash?
Thank you for the question. So, yes, basically, I think that there is going to be some, and I hate to call them recurring costs because they're really not, but some unique costs that are related to COVID-19 that are unusual from what we would typically see in the budget. We are spending free cash down pretty significantly this year through all of the expenditures that we have slated right now, although some of them we may be able to make up through reserves in the budget. But we do anticipate having free cash pretty well replenished into the next fiscal year, so I don't anticipate any issue with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Mr. Teresi.
I said my piece over the last two meetings, but just picking up on the last statement the town manager just made. You said you anticipate that free cash will be replenished over the next couple of years. Where will that be replenished from?
So we have 2 one-time revenue sources that I anticipate over the next 2 years. One is the Amazon permit fee. So you can't budget that because it won't happen again in the next fiscal year, but we do have a one-time revenue source there. We also have a Columbia gas account that we have to, basically DOR is going to force us to close out mid-fiscal year 22, which will replenish fiscal year the free cash for 23. So we have 2 one-time non-recurring revenue sources that will be helpful moving forward.
Okay, good. So you do anticipate some revenue from Amazon. That seems like a change from when we met in December.
I anticipate that we will get a permit fee this fiscal year. I don't anticipate any Amazon funding or revenue at all in fiscal year 22. But I do anticipate that in the April and May timeframe of this fiscal year, we will receive the permit fee.
When you use the word anticipate, Madam Manager, you're just not going to put it in writing. I mean, you do anticipate that Amazon is going to come to North Andover and be paying property taxes on a annual basis. If the permit's coming, you do anticipate that's going to happen?
Yes. So I now that Amazon has closed and they've started demolition, and on Monday night we have the signing of the development agreement as well as the assignment of the TIF on the Board of Selectmen's agenda. It's certainly looking like Amazon is a reality. What we need from them really is a construction schedule. I anticipate it'll probably be an 18-month construction because of the size of the building and the amount of work that they're doing, right? So we may start to see revenue flowing in for maybe half of fiscal year 23, but more likely fiscal year 24. And then we need to follow, obviously, the TIF schedule.
Thank you, Madam. I appreciate the answer. So I'm not going to belabor the point that I've made over the last couple of weeks here, but I think historically, the town has budgeted in a way that underestimates the revenue we take in and overestimates the expenses that we have, which has led us to have pretty good free cash balances over the year. And I know we use free cash. We kind of use free cash, and this goes back before the current town manager's time, obviously. We use current free cash to pay for a lot of capital expenditures. Obviously, in recent years, as far as the schools go, we were able to access that for our Ann Bradstreet Early Education Center, which is awesome. But we've been able to build, obviously, new town hall, new fire station, renovated the police station, DPW. We've done a lot of things. But to me, it's not transparent. I don't think people at town meeting completely understand the difference between free cash and stabilization account or our capital account. We use our free cash every single year for capital projects. And I know the town manager anticipates using, I think it's $3.5 or $4 million in 2023 for renovation of the Oak Country fire station. But we do that at the expense of underfunding our operating budget. And I don't want to belabor the point. We beat the hell out of it every single week about our per capita spending. We're down the bottom 10 of the entire state as far as the money we spend on schools. So I can see the direction this is heading in tonight. So I'm not gonna, I appreciate everyone's perspective on this, but unless we start building money into our annual budget every single year, we're going to have this problem again. And as much as the town manager is making a good faith effort to give us some one-time revenue to cover COVID expenses in FY22, I think she's continuing the trend of underestimating our revenues. Every story that I've seen as recently as yesterday about, tax receipts from the state blowing through January benchmarks, I think our revenues for 2022 could easily support a higher number than we're going to get this year from the town managers. Not recommended, but her encouragement to go to 2.5%. So I think it's a mistake to go down this road again, but at the same time, I can appreciate how my colleagues want to have a consensus budget and want to access that one-time revenue, which will mitigate a lot of our issues. So anyways, I think I've said my piece over the last couple of weeks, and I will obviously be voting against this budget this year.
Thank you, Mr. Teresi. Mr. McDevitt.
So thank you again for everyone who's here to help support and kind of see the process through. I still remain very concerned about the possible COVID expenses, $2.6 million that's there. There's $1 million that is for recovery services. For a number of weeks, I've been asking, what is that going to look like? Is that, and I don't know the number, but is that 15 specialists that are going to help with reading and 17 or, whatever those numbers are? And I don't see a plan for that. And I hear, we've got data from the fall and we're collecting data right now. And we are looking at this and we are basically going to approve $1 million or $2.6 million, and we don't see where that's going right now. And so I struggle with that a lot. Until I see that, I'm not in favor of the budget either.
Well, I'd be happy to address that. I think last time we talked about that at some length about what the needs are, what the recovery services, the guiding questions that we'll need. With especially particularly at the younger grades, mid-year data coming up, which will inform what we do and what we will need for services in terms of literacy, mathematics, SEL support, support at the secondary levels as well. And I think it's really important that we know where our students are. It would be easy to say we're going to have 4 reading teachers here, 3 social workers here. It's really critical to have all of the data to make an informed decision about what we need to get kids to a place further than they were, from point A to point B. And I'd be happy if Ms. Marks or Ms. Ando or Lackham would like to talk about that.
Sure. I just reiterate what Dr. Gilligan has said. We collected data in the fall, which, as Mr. McDevitt also mentioned, is older data. We are currently in the process of updating both literacy and some of our math data. We will have those results after vacation. Students have been taking DIBELS testing. They have been involved in MAP testing. And when we look at that data, that will start to inform what we need to do with our students. To base those decisions on what positions we would hire on fall data when our students had not been in school in the spring or the summer is not, we can't assume that's indicative of where they are now or where they will be at the end of the year. I know Dr. Gilligan talked about the fact that we may look at class size. He and I today got current numbers looking at class sizes for elementary classrooms next year. We are looking at possible intervention services, if that's the route we go based on the data. We are looking at possibly some additional coaching services. Our coaches have done a tremendous amount of work this year to help support our teachers and drive the curriculum. We are also looking at what sort of social emotional needs we may need to address. And I believe Dr. Gilligan and our team have also talked about whether there are any health and wellness needs that may need to be addressed. And again, I know a lot of the focus is on the elementary data, but we have also talked about what sort of support might we be able to provide at the secondary levels as well, the middle school and the high school, because we don't want to forget them. I don't know if anyone else has anything they'd like to add.
Could I just ask some of the principals, anybody who wants to, what they're seeing in the schools that may need to be addressed next year?
You may answer.
I think it's hard to say right now. Like Ms. Marks just mentioned, our fall data shows obviously less than what we would expect in a normal fall. When we compare fall 19 to fall 20, it's going to be different. They were out for the last 3 months of school. And we're talking about our youngest learners, like missing the end of kindergarten, coming into first grade, taking the DIBELS right away after however many months off, 6 days remote, and then right back to it. We're really excited about the fall data. Our coaches have been great, and our curriculum coordinators have been great. We've met already twice now since 2021 started with our teachers to review the data so far. And we're seeing great progress, even just from our January meeting to our February meeting. So what we've been talking about a lot in our principals meetings is how excited we are to see this MAP data, because we really want to look at the growth from fall 20 to winter 21, because what we're hoping but also expecting to see is a great trajectory based 100% on the incredible hard work of all of our teachers that they're putting in and day out under these difficult and challenging circumstances. They see these kids 2 days a week in person, most of the kids 2 days a week in person, 1 day live remote on Wednesdays. And they're working their tails off to get every minute to matter the most. And they're doing a great job. And we're excited to see what that data shows, and then to use that data to really have those conversations about, okay, what are we going to need moving forward into fiscal year 22?
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. Ms. Mably.
Okay, so maybe I'm approaching this a little bit differently, but I'm looking at a couple of different things. One is, and I think I mentioned this last time, that I do see the one-time COVID money as taking care of what we're going to determine to need to fill in these gaps. But I also see it taking, while it won't be into the operating budget like you're saying, Mr. Teresi, it's still a way to get the social workers that we need, to get the reading specialists that we need, other people that we need this year, using that one-time money and still being able to stay within the 2.5%, But then I'm looking at not really voting on this budget this year. I'm really looking at voting on the 7-year plan for me. And so the fiscal year 23 understanding, which we've been very clear, presenting that to, you've all been very clear, presenting that to us, but also to the community, to the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, to the Finance Committee where you presented it, is the understanding that we cannot continue the way we have been, that we're going to need even more in 23 than we asked for in the 5-year plan last time, because we are moving, we're playing the weight game by using the one-time money. So I do remain concerned that we, if we were to like, I know you're saying, Mr. Trissy, that there's more money you think that we could have. But if we're getting our needs met by the one-time money and understanding that we have to have the money next year, I'm just worried that we're not going to get the support from our community beyond the parents if we push for something more and then the whole plan falls apart long-term. So I'm very concerned about that. I feel that this is meeting what the requirements and the requests have been to be sure that we are in good standing with community players, but also with the full understanding that the next several years we can't have level services and there can be no more 3%, and we haven't asked for it. We're asking for a lot more. And so I'm supporting it because of that.
Ms. Picard, may I jump in?
Certainly, Mr. Teresi.
I think Ms. Mabley is spot on, and she's coming from a really good place with her aspirational desires for our community. I guess my fear is something I've seen, and maybe it's because I've been around for a couple of years, until our other boards, this Board of Selectmen and the FinCom, step up and publicly say they're going to support an override to help us bridge this gap. Because this gap has been there for a long time. We all know we are underfunding our schools to an incredible degree. But, I hear over and over again, this is not directed towards the town manager because she's been here for a year and a half. But I hear the Board of Selectmen saying that they support the schools, the FinCom, they support the schools. Until you step up and say that you're going to support an override publicly, talk is cheap. Talk is cheap. And that's what it's going to take to get us to the point where we want to go. There was and I hate to go to Facebook, but there was a post from someone who was thinking of buying a house in North Andover this past weekend. She wanted to know what the schools are like and stuff. And everyone said the exact same thing, just about, man, we have a great experience at our schools. Our teachers are awesome. They do the best with what they have. The reality is they don't have what they have. They need. We need so much more. And we have the resources to. We have the income. We have the wealth in this town. And respectfully to the town manager, I do think historically this town has underestimated the revenues we take in. And we use that money, it dumps into free cash. Free cash goes to, listen, I was chair of the school building committee when we built the ABCC. Town meeting approved that project for $6.2 or $6.4 million, whatever it was. I guarantee you, I don't know for a fact, because it was all with the former town manager, that number had to be over $8 million that we spent on that because of the site work. So there was a pool of money that was able to be funneled to that project, and it got done, and I'm appreciative of that, but it's not transparent. It's not transparent at all. So I hope you're right. I hope that this one-time revenue gets us through FY22, and then the selectmen are serious, because when I know, everyone knows, only the Board of Selectmen can put that question in front of the voters. You need to have the Board of Selectmen vote to put that kind of override question in front of the voters. And anyone who's running for selectmen this year, you should ask that. If you support the schools, you should ask that at every single candidate running. Will you support an override for the schools? Because at this rate, we're never going to get out of the hole we're in right now.
Madam Chair, could I just address the capacity issue? I can't speak to anything before the last 18 months in North Andover, but I can speak to fiscal year 21. And I did present this to the Finance Committee last meeting. We had excess capacity for fiscal year 21 of $123,000. It's less than 1% of the budget. It's actually 1% exactly of the budget. $123,275.54. That was the excess capacity that we could have raised. So last year, this year, the fiscal year we're in, since I've been here, we have not left capacity on the table. I can't speak to the years before that, but I can tell you that I am dedicated and committed to working with the school department on figuring out a strategy to get more funding to the schools. I said it in the letter, I've said it to Superintendent Gilligan, and I mean it. Working together and linking an override to Facilities Master Plan 2 is the only way to achieve the goals that you all have. And I think if we're all willing to put the work in and really bring forward a reasonable strategy that's collaborative and community-based, we can build that support. And I look forward to doing that over the next year.
And if I could just add one thing before more comments. I would say, Melissa, we've been working every week, almost daily, seems lately almost daily on different things, but, in terms of the consensus budget being a level budget and the ability to bring those positions to the high school, even with that, the ability to meet the needs of what our students have. Many communities won't be able to do that. But more importantly, if we're going to change the trajectory and what our kids need here in North Andover, and if our education is going to line up with our values, the aspirations, who we want to be, what kind of schools we want to have, we need a longer term plan. I said it before, I'm the 8th superintendent in 15 years. We've been battling over 1% and 2% and 3% each year. And when you have a $50 million budget, and level services is typically 3%, and you get 3.5, you have $250,000 for new initiatives. So I'm really looking forward to the long game here about changing the trajectory of putting it all together, having it coincide with the spaces that we're going to need that are critical, so we create the best places for teachers to teach and kids to learn, and it all has to be tied together, and I'm really looking forward to the recommendations from the school committee subcommittee to the Facilities Master Plan 2 group. So I'm committed long-term on the long game to make this work.
I have another question, if it's okay.
Ms. Lynch?
If the $2.6 million from the free cash does not get approved at town meeting, what is our backup plan for those costs?
So if the $2.6 million from free cash should require a majority vote at town meeting, it would be brought forward as a separate article. We still are funding the Finance Committee reserve in the next fiscal year, so that is something that we still would be able to go to. If the state of emergency is still in existence, we would be able to declare a state of emergency and get DOR's permission to deficit spend if we had to. So there are options outside of the free cash. They're less than ideal. For instance, if you deficit spend, really affects your ability to raise taxes in the following year. The free cash is really, in my opinion, the most reasonable and probably dutiful way to handle this situation at this point, but there is the finance reserve account. So this year we have the finance reserve account, as you know, in the MOU. It's the first place that we'll go to try to offset the costs that exist from December 31st until June 30th, before we will put our free cash article forward for the rest of that, or stabilization. But we do have that account there that we use for snow and ice, excess special education costs, et cetera.
Thank you.
And in the last memorable town meetings, have we had any discussion or disagreement about spending of free cash? We do that quite regularly. My recollection of town meetings is that when we get to the budget, when we're consensus, it's pretty quick and it's pretty unanimous.
It is. Can I make another question or point, Mrs. Picard?
You may, and then I'd like to say some things.
Sure. So, Mrs. Mavely spoke a little bit about, making sure that, we're keeping in mind the requirements of the community, and, the budget and everything that's here. And I think the underlying thing and the reason why the 5 of us are here is the requirements of the students and what is it that they need. And, again, I go back to what is it that they need? What does the data tell us? And we've heard again today, we don't have the data to tell us exactly what that is. So I don't understand why we're approving a budget when we don't know what that data is going to tell us. That data could tell us we need $750,000, and that's all we should be asking for. And if that data tells us we need 1.7, then that's what we should be asking for. But we're asking for a budget. We're going to take this and go to town meeting with our hands out and say, this is what we need. And then, sorry guys, well, we had to approve it because it was February, but we didn't have the data. So now that it's May, now we've got this whole other problem that's here. We should not approve this budget until we know exactly what the needs are for the students of this town.
So
Can I just
part of what I need to say is in response to what you're saying, Mr. McDevitt. This is an irregular process in an irregular year. And it is my understanding that by law, what we can approve is the operating budget. This free cash piece is not really something that's within our domain, unless I'm mistaken about that. But we do have assurances from our town manager that free cash is going to be her recommendation. It's been discussed and supported, in my opinion, at the Finance Committee. So not approving the operating budget doesn't do anything to the free cash. And our approval of the request for free cash doesn't have any legal standing. So I think that that's not really a good reason to not approve the operating budget. My opinion is that this is an opportunity in crisis to support all levels of our education. We can appreciate the support and commitment from our town manager and our finance committee to approach this creatively in finding ways to address what are long-term and short-term needs. And I'm really pleased about that. Those things that we need in the best of times are certainly some of those things that we will need in these worst of times and will be included in that funding. I don't think that there's anything that stops the town manager between now and May. Should we go back to her and say we only need $500,000? Actually, we don't need anything. Our kids are way above the curve. Please don't give us anything from that free cash. Please save that for expenses in the future. I think that the town manager would be happy to agree with us on that when we can talk to FinCom. Having a vote now is the only thing that's going to give us the opportunity to continue the conversation, in my opinion.
Chair Picard, could I just add one thing?
You may.
I think one of the most important parts is this. When we looked at the 5-year plan, we had, special education in there, we had a social worker in there, we had EL. We know in recovery services, this is something we're really good at. Knowing what we want kids to know and be able to do, having the assessment and the data and see the progress we're making, tracking it, providing targeted interventions, progress monitoring, making decisions about what are the next steps. And tied into all of this is going to have to be teacher collaboration and back in a regular schedule with that and professional development. And there is no doubt we're going to need special educators. We're going to need people with special education testing. We're going to need counselors, teachers, interventionists, probably some contracted services, and then additionally programming, summer programming, possibly Acceleration Academy in April. So I think that this is stuff that this team is really good at. I think it's really progressive. There aren't many communities. I think when we brought the budget forward, I would point out that we identified this, I think, pretty proactively around saying we have these needs. I've studied a lot of budgets that have been put forward in other communities, and they said these were unbudgeted. I was happy the first go around with the town manager to work with us and say, let's put separately budgeted, and then that letter of commitment to say, okay, we have to meet the needs of these kids. So, that's the most important thing. And I'm looking forward to really a terrific bunch of work by our teachers, our classroom teachers, the folks here in the audience tonight on screen, meeting those kids, coming back for the fall. Make no mistake about it, we're working hard on it now. And to Ms. Mabley's point, I think we will have continued needs each year after that as well.
Okay, so I think another piece that's very important, I think it's important to listen to our educators who say that it's premature to make this determination, and we have no need to post for these positions tomorrow. The usual posting time would be much closer to town meeting time. And by then we're going to have much better idea of what we need. My question that I have for the town manager is how we anticipate our North Andover revenues to support our North Andover Public Schools plan from the Facilities Master Plan 2 and from an operations perspective.
So I guess it's a twofold answer. One of the things that we've been doing over the last year or so is making sure that we have some levy capacity to take on some of that debt. So this year in particular, we had some debt come off of the books, about $600,000. And the reason we strategically decided to go the free cash route for capital rather than debt was that we would keep that freed up to pay for our future capital needs of Facilities Master Plan 2, namely the schools. You know, if we can show the public that we've started to prepare for this, right, and that we've saved some money and that we're ready to offset some of the costs that are coming forward, I think it goes a long way. And so we've been creating some capacity within our debt to do that, right? And when you do that, that kind of creates a situation where your taxes are staying more balanced and you're not suddenly shocking the system with a large amount of new debt, right? Really important part of what we're doing. You know, we do know that eventually we will have the Amazon money come on, and that starts out at around $900,000 of a payment. So, you know, by the time we get these buildings starting and going, we may be able to absorb even more of the capacity, right? And then but I think it's really important to realize that when you build a new building, whether it's a senior center or it's the Bradford Street School, you have costs that go along with that, right? And you have the short-term costs like furniture, but you have new long-term costs like utilities and janitorial and teachers to fill the space and those teachers' health insurance and all these different things that go along with that are going to be outside of what we can afford to do within Proposition 2.5. And so I think when you bring your buildings forward, you really bring forward the operational needs as well, and they go hand in hand. And it's a package that we introduce to the public. If we want to have these new space, this is what we need in order to operate that space. And we bring it forward in a really pragmatic and reasonable way, and people will buy into that. But it is going to require an override. It is going to require a debt exclusion. It won't require it for all of it because we've done a good job of saving for some of those things. But in the long term, in order to accomplish the goals, right, we will need to take make some changes into how we do this, and we will need to think about an override.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, I just heard something that I'm maybe a little confused. I'm sorry. You said it's going to require a debt exclusion override. Do you mean a general override for the operating budget? Because aren't we using free cash to pay for our the things that we normally would build through a debt exclusion, buildings, capital projects? We're using basically free cash to build those projects. But don't you mean a general override for the operating budget?
I mean both.
You mean
So,
both? Okay,
yes,
that's fair.
because when you're thinking about these buildings, right, if we have a smaller building that we're doing a reno on, that's a $3 million reno, sure, we could appropriate free cash to do something like that. But if we're doing a larger school building that's in the tens of millions of dollars, that type of debt capacity just will not fit within our budget. So there's two types of overrides,
Right.
and I'm sure you know this, right?
Yeah.
One is a debt exclusion. It only increases the levy for a short period of time until you pay that debt off. The other one is a regular override, which increases the levy forever. So I would suggest we would do both.
That's simply the point that I'm making, that we have avoided overrides, debt exclusion and general overrides, for over 15 years. There has been one in this town since 2007 that's even appeared on the ballot. And what we do in this town instead is, again, respectfully, before your time, we have a pool of free cash that we use to pay for a capital project. We've been able to buy and renovate a police station, build a new fire station, do a town hall, do this building, do the Brad Street, and there's a benefit to that. I get that, but the public needs to understand that comes with a cost, and the cost is underfunding our operating budget. That's why we have free cash up the yin-yang. Anyways, I repeat myself.
So another question I have, Madam Town Manager, is if we found, so at this point, we're not projecting any revenues from Amazon, I understand that. If we found in the future that the revenues from Amazon and whatever other development happens in town would support the school's needs, would we try to do that without an override?
So I'd say yes. If we have new revenue that's coming in, right, we would use it to offset our expenses moving forward. And so, Amazon's kind of an interesting one because it's not very burdensome on the community, right? You're not seeing new students. We're not thinking we're going to have huge amounts of calls for service for police or fire, right? It's really office space, warehouse space more than anything else. And so you're not worried about so much about offsetting burdens with that benefit. So yes, with new capacity comes on, whether it's Amazon or our regular new growth that we see every year, which usually ranges to the $600,000 to $800,000 point, or the Avalon apartments, those are all things that will offset the amount that we'll need to do an override for, right? And we can account for that. But when we think realistically about what our goals are, and if we go through the facilities master plan 2 process and then we get all the operational needs linked to that, and I know we've talked about that 4.5% number, but I anticipate that realistically it's going to be more than that, right? Because that 4.5% number is staff, right? It doesn't take into account that we might have a whole new wing of a building that we now need electricity for, right? So we have to think about all of those things. We have to bring all of those things into the bucket. And if you think about that logically, right, your budget's 2.5%. Right, Proposition 2.5 is Proposition 2.5, and what you have basically is 2.5% plus new growth, right? And we're working on an $80 million levy, right? You're not going to get that 4.5% every single year or more based on our regular budgeting process. It's just not possible. And so together, we're going to have to make a commitment to bringing forward these needs, not just a town meeting, but also to an election. And I think that the best, in my opinion, and I know I've said this at our tri-board meeting, is to link those to our space needs and bring them together as one coherent, reasonable project that people can get behind and support.
And are you anticipating a need? I know that you're anticipating some cuts to the town department operating budgets. Are you anticipating a need to augment that funding? Would that be part of an override as well?
I am, so I'm not presenting the town budget till Monday, but the town side of the budget can only increase by 0.6%. We're losing 1.5 employees. So it's certainly tough. I think that if we see the type of new growth that has continued, namely the residential new growth. So for instance, if the proposed Royal Crest project went forward, if Avalon gets built out, I anticipate that we would eventually need more firefighters and policemen. We've been trying to be really diligent about going for safer grants and COPS grants for those because it's a much easier way to build that expense into your budget. But if those come to fruition, I expect that there'll be burdens on the police and fire department, which we certainly could talk about linking to anything that you're doing.
Thank you. Those are my questions and comments for now. Is there anything else the committee wants to know or hear or say before we move into a vote?
I guess one last comment was, and I appreciate thank you, Town Manager Rodriguez, for your comments, because we have historically done a lot of great things, but we've left stuff on the table. We built a great new high school, but didn't have the operating budget to put the teachers in place. One of the reasons I actually ran for school committee, and I had nothing to do with the Kittredge School, but I was pretty horrified that the Kittredge School built a gym and the parents had to raise money for a floor. I mean, that's insane to me. We don't want to be in that position. That's why we need to change the trajectory, as Dr. Gilligan was saying, about how we fund our schools. I also ran because I didn't love the idea of making the PTOs buy all those Chromebooks a few years ago that Dr. Price put together. But honest to God, had that initiative not happened, we'd really have been in a mess this year because nobody would have had the skills ready to use the Chromebooks, and you were able to buy more. So we've done a lot of crazy things out of necessity on the backs of our families, and we need to stop that. And so I'm glad to hear that we're trying to make sure that we're not just building a building, but we're putting the whole package together. And that's why, and I'm trying to be super clear, like, we need a commitment for this whole 5-year, 7-year plan. It can't just be 2.5. We'll see how it goes next year. Like, we need the money next year too.
But we're only voting on tonight's.
I know that, and I guess I'm being too Pollyanna or something, but I feel that I want us to trust the commitment and be part of, David's laughing at me now, but no, but
I'm admiring you. You're just as jaded and bitter as I am.
I guess not, but we need to be doing better, and I think this plan is trying to make sure we're doing, and honestly, we are so sidetracked this year. We put the plan out there last year, it got off to a great start and got, held up, and so I'm in favor of doing our part this year but we have to get back on the track of doing what's necessary, and I'm grateful that we can at least fill the holes with the one-time money. And about I understand, Mr. McDevitt, you wanted to see the plan, but I do understand why it's hard to give one right now. And they could probably write up a plan and give it to us, and it might be totally different. Would we care? Probably not. Just as long as the money's being used correctly to solve the biggest problems, so.
I have another. It should time out well. It will time well this spring with the data that comes in. What are the needs, the programming needs, the special education needs, all these things combined. It will time well with our team in putting that together with town meeting prior to.
So I'm done.
I have another question about one-time money. Right now, we're looking at 2.6 million from free cash, but we don't know what might come in from the federal or state government. It's potential, I imagine, that 2.6 free cash would be offset by federal or state one-time money that's coming in.
Yeah, we're already hearing now of some grants that are going to be made available to districts. We were wondering if it was going to happen, and then it was taking a long time, but there's a grant that we have to apply for by February 5th, so tomorrow, that is over $1 million in COVID-related recovery services and expenses that'll be available to North Andover. And then an ESSER 2 grant. If you remember, we had $300,000 in ESSER 1, which we are still spending. But the ESSER 2 grant will be another couple of $100,000 that'll be available as well. So there are now becoming apparent that there are some other sources of funds that'll be made available to school districts.
And is that
You said offset or in addition to?
In addition to.
Thank you. Okay.
Is that for fiscal year 21 or fiscal year 22, Jim?
No, it's money that does not need to be spent until September of 23.
Okay, so some longer term money.
Correct.
Anyone else? Are we ready for a vote?
I do have one more question.
Yes, please.
Could any of the one-time COVID money, if it comes down to it this year, get the kids back full-time? Could the money be used for that if necessary? If there are additional costs to getting the kids back full-time and we can do it safely, can that money be used for that?
In advance. The free cash money in advance. The mechanism in and of itself, I would say, for Jim or the town manager would understand the mechanism part, but certainly anything that all the things that we'd be looking forward to this spring, if it required money, that'd be a good question for Madam Town Manager and Dr. Mealy.
Well, it's the finance reserve, isn't it?
Yeah. So if it was at town meeting, so I'm not sure how that would time out. I mean, the timing.
Free cash transfer at town meeting, right? It really depends how we frame it. So we'll be doing 2 free cash transfers at town meeting. One will be to offset the $700,000 in costs from December 31st through June 30th for the schools. So that will be transferred or appropriated to the fiscal year 21 budget unless we're able to take it from the reserve, which no one else will tell us soon enough. The secondary transfer, so we'll have a special within the annual to do the 2021 portions of it, and then we'll have a secondary transfer. Because it is a free cash transfer, it could start to be used as early as May 18th, right after town meeting gets closed, or whatever that is. But you couldn't use it before that.
But the finance reserve is available for us this fiscal year, and nobody has touched it, correct? And I think that was $1.6 million appropriated in June of last year?
So it's $1.5 million in the finance reserve account. We, according to the MOU, have it laid out on how we will pay the additional COVID costs that exist right now through June 30th. Those have been estimated at $700,000 that the town is looking for. So our first stop will actually be within the operating budgets. We have some positions we didn't fill all year long because we were worried about revenues, that kind of thing. So we'll look there first. The second stop will be that finance reserve account. The third stop will be free cash, and the final stop will be the stabilization account.
And those grants that I mentioned are available as soon as they're approved and dispersed. While we don't have to spend them until the 23rd, as soon as we get the money, so they could be available if needed for this year as well.
Oh, okay.
And it really just depends on whether it's the federal grants or we're talking state grants. Sometimes they don't meet their own deadlines. We meet the deadlines in terms of the application, but they can be a little bit slower in their response.
But we can be assured, Dr. Gilligan, that if there are safe ways to bring children back to school and there are financial needs, you're going to bring them to us immediately, right?
Yes. Yeah. Everyone would like to have everyone in school. And this budget's predicated on planning for a full return for the fall.
I'm in favor of that.
Let's vote now.
All right. I'm going to call for a vote, and it will be roll call, and I'll start with Ms. Lynch.
Yeah, so I have, this has been a hard week for me. I've been going back and forth with this. On the one hand, I agree with all my colleagues. Every point raised tonight is a good one, and they're all valid. We have been underfunding our schools for too long. We did all come together last year and vote on a budget that we all felt comfortable with, only to be voting on a completely new budget tonight. I was most concerned at the beginning of this process about us kind of punting this year and saying that none of the needs we identified last year were important this year, but that's been addressed with the free cash commitment, which I'm happy about, and that if we need to get positions in there to help our kids, that's what we're going to do. So in the end, I feel the collaboration between the town and our administration has been strong. I have no reason to think, Madam Town Manager, you're not a person of your word. And I feel like, we're all making a leap of faith here tonight. And I feel like you're putting a good faith effort for our schools. And I feel confident that if we have needs, and next year when these needs change, that you'll have our backs. So I will vote yes.
Mr. Teresi.
So thank you, Holly, for that. I really respect where you're coming from on that, and I appreciate your willingness to have that good faith effort and willingness to trust that the town manager is going to do the right thing. And her being here tonight, I can appreciate that as well. I think she is here in absolute good faith. Why I'm going to vote no is because historically I think we've seen the same song and dance for the last several years. And, I haven't heard Bo Peep out of the Board of Selectmen about this at all. It's a very serious issue that I really wonder if the Board of Selectmen's taking seriously or not. And again, there's a race coming up this March, and it's a question that every single candidate should be asked: are they going to support the schools? Because we haven't seen it, and I know the town manager is doing what she can, and this one-time revenue does present a good faith effort, but yet, maybe it's because the Eagle treatment doesn't cover the town of North Andover anymore. But I haven't seen anything on patch either. I haven't seen anyone talk about it. And I hear we have so many great school supporters on the Board of Selectmen, but, show me the money. Show me the money. Show me you're going to step up and do the things that need to be done. And I also feel, quite frankly, that because I'm not running for re-election, I kind of feel like I'm letting you guys down a little bit to advocate for the needs of the schools. And that bothers me just very much so. But, there's a lot of good, talented people in this town that I'm sure are going to step up and advocate for the schools, like you all have done. And I can really respect where I think the majority of this board is going on this budget. There's no hard feelings or ill will here, but obviously I'm going to vote no on this because I've seen this this play out before. So respectfully, I'm going to vote no.
Mr. McDevitt.
This is difficult, right? And we've always gone into town meeting, with a consensus budget. I can't ever remember going in with anything but 5-0, probably for all of the boards coming in. And it's not that I don't support the plan and the commitment from the town manager and Dr. Gilligan. But in my mind, this is, again, if what we're hearing and what we're saying is it's too early to understand exactly what the needs are, then we do not have the requirements of the students of North Andover reflected in this budget. And so I'm voting no.
Ms. Babley.
So, Ms. Lynch, you've said the same things that I've been wrestling with and saying as well. And I do, again, feel that this is the right way to go. You can ask for, in your own personal budget, want to do certain things, but if the money's not there, you have to plan for longer term. And given the year that we're all experiencing in this world, I just don't feel like this is the year to assume that or demand more if it doesn't exist. But and I know I can't vote on the 7-year plan today, but I've already said I'm looking down the road, and so I'm voting yes. And trusting the good faith. And I think we've made it pretty clear starting last year to the community, and that's not just to the parent community, but to the community members of North Andover, that things have got to change. And so this is the last shot here. So we need people on board. So I'm voting yes for tonight.
And the chair votes yes. I don't think I really need to add any words. I think all my colleagues speak well, speak from the heart, speak from the mind. And I appreciate the work of our administration and the town manager and her team. So that vote is carried, 3 yes, 2 no, with Ms. Lynch, Ms. Mabley, Ms. Picard voting yes, Mr. Teresi and Mr. McDevitt voting no. Thank you all who were here for that. And again, we can certainly will talk more about budget and needs throughout the spring. So we're on to our next order of business, which is the second reading of the 21-22 school calendar. It does not say vote, but usually on our second reading we do have a vote. So I wonder if there is a motion to approve the school calendar as printed and then we'll have discussion, unless I forget again.
Madam Chair, may I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
I really want to thank the town manager for being here tonight. If you'd like her to stick around for the calendar discussion, we're more than happy to have her, but I kind of feel like she's one of our, like when we have the students on, they have homework to do, and I'm sure she has to go get ready for her budget presentation Monday night. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to just say thank you for coming tonight. I look forward to a long partnership and really changing the trajectory of our schools. And if you would mind freeing her up, would be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
No,
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to. Good night.
I have a question on the school calendar, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
So
Are we going to have discussion before we have a motion?
you're the chair.
I'll make a motion that we approve the school calendar for 21-22 as presented in this document.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Ms. Mabley, seconded by Ms. Lynch, and discussion starting with Mr. Teresi.
So my question to the superintendent and his team is, if we moved the start date, so we're gonna school for kids, students starts on Wednesday the 1st and the 2nd.
Yep.
Okay? If we push that back and the start date was the 7th after Labor Day, and just moved the end date from the 15th to the 17th, so instead of getting on Wednesday the 15th, is it that simple to me? Am I missing something? Is that an even trade-off?
Hold on, David, I'm trying to see.
Oh.
I have the wrong glasses on here tonight. I had to dig these out, so let me just pull it up.
Mine are fogging up too, so
Can I just
appreciate-
ask a quick question while you're doing that? I think we talked about that last week, and one of the follow-ups was whether or not there was communication with the union on that, because
Yes, correct.
the start date officially is there, and I think the wording is that they will, my dates are off here, but.
The 30th, they'd work the 30th and the 1st. They would come
Correct.
back this year. That was what was in the contract. Students could start on the Wednesday and Thursday. There'd be the 4-day weekend, and they would come back the day after Labor Day.
I
Correct.
thought you
So-
read that it was no earlier than the 30th.
No, I thought it was will. That's why.
I have the language. I'm just kind of
Okay.
pull it up. Like I said, I'm sorry about my
I
glasses.
thought that you'd read last week,
I
no
have it
earlier
here.
than August
Oh, if you
30th.
can read it, Andrew, I'm having a hard time fogging up.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because I know we've talked about, how it's sometimes difficult to get, people to watch your kids before Labor Day like that, because a lot of college kids are back at school, camps have ended, but by the same token, ending on the 15th and then trying to find someone for the 16th and 17th is probably just as difficult. If it's an easy trade-off and there's no union issue, my preference would be to start on September 7th after Labor Day and continue all the way to the 17th instead. And I'm willing to hear if there's pushback from the administration why that wouldn't be feasible, but it seems to be a pretty easy trade-off to me.
I would disagree that it's just as hard at the end to find coverage because the college kids
easier.
are out by
Yes,
then.
that's what I was saying, but
So it's easier for parents who have young kids to start before Labor Day.
And all the high school kids are out too.
Right.
I would add that we've presented this and we've gotten absolutely no feedback from the community asking for any changes to it.
no, right.
And we thought about it last year.
Yeah, well, and last year was the first year we started before Labor Day.
Yep.
For in a long time.
We actually didn't even start before Labor Day
I
this
know.
year.
Well,
That was the plan.
And that was a
you had to
concern.
bring that one up too, didn't you? I think I made a motion to start before Labor Day.
But actually, but to that point, and our educators would know best, but we haven't had a normal school year, right? And I could imagine having kids come back into the buildings with their whole class for 2 days and get used to just norms and procedures, and then go have a 4-day weekend and then start is actually a dream date versus waiting till
Right.
mid-September to really get rolling.
We're going to go back to school after February. Everybody's back in school. We're going to be all set.
Oh my God, David.
I'll make that trade-off.
I
I'll
don't
give
want
you after Labor Day if they
I
can
don't
go
want to
back in
age
February.
myself, but I was here working as an administrator when we did this. And, there was a lot of success with, 2 days of PD, the kids would come in for a couple days and really you'd get a writing assessment, you get the books out, and, go through the norms, all that. People would have a 4-day weekend and then they come back and hit the ground running.
Well, we're going to need that more than ever this year because people just have not had a full, especially the younger kids have not had a full-on situation, in over a year. So,
And we hear all the time that June is not the best time for learning and September is the best time for learning.
that's right. Mr. McDevitt found the
Yeah,
language.
so let me just read the language here, if anyone's trying to follow along. It's on page 21 of the contract, which can be found on the website. On the top, regarding the 2021 year, it says the start date for teachers in years 2 and 3 of this agreement will be August 30th, 2021. And August 29th, 2022. And then the only other piece that it says is school will not be in session for teachers or students on the Friday prior to Labor Day. But it doesn't say anything else. So I think the reason why I think Mr. Teresi is bringing this up is I also had the question last time on whether or not we had any conversations with the union on that or not. Because I think to move it with the word will, now in theory, I guess they could come back the 30th and the 31st and not have students on
Until the 7th.
the 1st, the 2nd,
Mm-hmm.
and return on the 7th. I don't know if that logically makes sense to come back
Right.
that
Yeah.
way either. I'm not saying I'm in favor of it or not, but I think it's a conversation that should be had. And I think, as Mr. Teresi said, we're moving, 2 days from August, potentially adding them on into June. What makes me a little nervous about that is right now we're slated with no days to end on the 15th. Adding 2 days pushes us to the 17th. And so I think the other question that we had is, if we don't have snow days and we have remote days, that's fine. We end on a Friday, everything's perfect. But one power storm, gas explosion, let's hope to God not,
Yep.
anything else like that
Locusts.
happens,
Yep.
right? Now we're into
Pushes
a
us in the next week.
subsequent
Yeah.
start of a week. And I think that
Right.
was a very clear,
Yep.
when I sat through the negotiations, it's just awful to come back for a day.
Yes,
Um,
for everyone.
Yep.
For everyone, for
And-
parents, for teachers, for students, everyone. So,
Yeah.
But it seems we would only need to even revisit that if we were inclined to changing this schedule. I personally am not inclined to changing
Right.
the schedule.
Yeah, I feel like this is, is where we, talked about last year. And I think last year was the big struggle, coming to an agreement because we were still under the old contract. We had to get the new contract ratified. And then in this year, this would be the anticipated start date.
Right.
And to my way of thinking, the teachers negotiated a will come back on the 30th, 31st with the anticipation that they would have students on the 1st and 2nd.
But that's
Right.
not in the contract, though.
the data of the students is not in the contract.
Right, so,
No, they can't put that in the contract, but that would be what would be anticipated. That's
Yeah.
what's normal, right? You get the
Yeah.
people together, you get all
We-
psyched
we're
up.
anticipating
you
a lot of
get
things
people
tonight.
speaker, and then you walk in the door with students. You don't just go home after all that energy building and go like, oh, well, I'll see them in a week.
Right.
Are we ready to vote?
I would rather have some communication, or clarification, I should say, from the union on that. And then I think the other one was, are we allowed to have what we had, I think, 2 years ago? I don't even know if we ever used it, but we called them
Beyond the classroom.
beyond the
classroom.
classroom bags, right?
Yeah.
Is that even a possibility? So,
So two things is, one is I do believe, that, the union is in favor of what's here, but we can certainly double check again. Secondly, beyond the classroom bags were eliminated by Jeff Riley right before COVID hit.
Right.
So I think we'll be waiting to hear from him. But, certainly, we can double check. But I think that the big part of the negotiations was around, the understanding that teachers come back 2 days and then we typically have our kids in year two. And
but part of that conversation was very much about how early can we get out in June,
Yep.
right? And I don't mean it in a bad way, right? Like, June is tough, it's hot, we have a lot of families who are leaving,
Yep.
summer camps are starting, like, people are pulling their kids. Let's end earlier in June, let's move it back 2 days. If we've got beyond the classroom, and we've got the opportunity to do that, and then we can end on that Friday the 17th,
Yep.
that may be agreeable to everybody. And I don't want to go off of that assumption, which was, I don't even remember now, a year ago when we made that conversation with the union.
But that assumes there's no snow days or power outage
That's
days.
right.
But
And
if we have-
and the earliest they get out is under this proposed draft.
that's right.
I'm not
But-
seeing, the DESC, I can check, but again, they had got rid of the beyond the classroom, and it remains to be seen from them on any policies moving forward for next year. I mean, I think they've got a lot more pressing issues they're tackling, but I'd be happy to inquire with DESI if you want.
So I'm hearing several people on the committee that sound like they're ready to support this as it's presented in the packet. I hear Mr. McDevitt saying he wants more information from folks. I'm inclined to, we have a motion and we have a second. I'm inclined to have the vote. We could revisit it if we needed to.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to check with Desi this week and see what they say and get back to me.
I just don't understand how it changes anything.
Right.
So,
And that takes us out to February 25 for revisiting this. So I'm gonna call for the, our next meeting isn't scheduled until February 25.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and call for the vote, and it's roll call, and I'll start with Ms. Lynch.
Yes.
Mr. Teresi?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
I don't feel I have my questions answered, so I will be a no again.
Thank you. Ms. Mably?
yes.
And the chair votes yes. So it's 3-2, the motion carries. Ms. Lynch, Ms. Mably, Ms. Picard in favor, Mr. Teresi and Mr. McDevitt voting no. Thank you. We have no new business tonight. And so before we adjourn, we have an opportunity for a go-around. And I would start with Ms. Lynch.
I just want to address the very large number of public comments that we've had. And I just want to reiterate again, like Mr. Teresi, I've been vocal since July or August that we need to get these kids back in school full time. So I appreciate Ms. Luz's comment. I appreciate Mr. Evangelista's comment and all the others that have come in prior to this meeting. I was happy to hear we're down to 2.9% tonight. All of these signs and with the vaccinations coming out are just trending in the right direction to get our kids back. And so I would just like to go on record saying that whatever we can do to move in that direction, I think we really need to start addressing it and coming up with some kind of plan and what we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Teresi?
What she said. Ditto.
Thank you. Mr. McDevitt?
So I'm going to agree with that, obviously, as well. And then, as we look to our next meeting, which is February 25th, I'm hoping that we have an update on the plan that Mrs. Marks mentioned regarding first and second grade students returning to school. So I hope that that's coming on the 25th.
Thank you. And Ms. Mably?
Nothing to add in.
Okay.
You done good, huh? You done
I have nothing to add.
Everybody said I have nothing to add. It's been said.
Come on, agree.
Okay, so that all being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, actually, before I do that, let me just again thank all the folks from the administration for being with us tonight. I know you had a full day with students. You'll have a full day with students again tomorrow. It's certainly been a full year. And so spending the last hour and a half or 2 hours with us is much appreciated. So now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Ms. Lynch, seconded by Mr. McDevitt. No discussion, roll call vote. Ms. Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. Teresi?
Giddy up.
Mr. McDevitt?
I'm going to vote yes on this.
Ms. Mably?
I will continue to vote yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you all very much. Thank you, committee members. I know you have really been working overtime with your thoughts to all the issues that we've been facing this year. And this meeting, by a 5-0 vote, adjourns at 8:39 on February 4th, 2021. Thank you very much.